Awesome. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Hope you guys had a great long weekend. Today is September 8th, Tuesday after the long weekend, and we're diving into market news flow. So, the first thing I would like to talk about is the long weekend recap. Firstly, we saw unemployment data come out on Friday. We saw 8.4% overall, which is lower than the estimated 9.8%. This is obviously good. Mnuchin on Sunday reiterated that these were great numbers showing great progress. Also, it is important to note that the Korean Wednesday unemployment numbers just came out this evening, just nearly 4%, which is another indicator of how much better their response has been to the current the health environment with the pandemic. In addition, we see a concern over the higher proportion of permanent job losses as opposed to in the great financial crisis, which is what you can see on the chart on the right. The red line over there represents the difference in permanent unemployment losses. And then in the blue line, we see the job crises coming out of the 2007 and 2001. We see this is much steeper, which is a cause for concern because the people being laid off here are going to be laid off for a longer period of time. In addition, we saw a tech beatdown continue on Friday, and that continued today. We saw the NASDAQ down over 4%, and I believe the NASDAQ finished down about 3% today. In addition, Dow futures are sitting down about 40 basis points right now. So it looks like, NASDAQ futures are down about 40 basis points right now. So it looks like the rout will continue into tomorrow and I guess the foreseeable future. In addition, we do want to mention SoftBank's options play. This is really interesting. They have now been dubbed as the NASDAQ whale because they've bought about $50 billion US dollars worth of stock options. The Japanese trading of SoftBank fell a little bit over 7% in Tokyo on Monday when markets were open. It's Labor Day, is just the US holiday. SoftBank is in about $30 billion of exposure, which is driving open interest on these tech equity options. One of the things that we've seen recently is a lot of people are attributing big open interest in options, which basically means a lot of contracts now exist. There's a lot of people that are interested in trading options, as the name would imply. And SoftBank can actually be one of those big drivers. We see that they do have an impressive $4 billion of unrealized paper gains, which on the surface seems great. But the problem is, and I'll reiterate, that big exposure. And now given the rout in the NASDAQ that's continuing into tomorrow, that's a problem that lies ahead for them. In addition, the S&P 500 will not be including Tesla, and this has led to Tesla's biggest ever decline in Tuesday's session. It is still up 23% since announcing the split in August 11th, but it was down a little bit over 21% during the day today and another 4% after hours. This means it's trading around 319, which contrasts its high of 502 on September 1st, again, after the split. All right. On Friday as well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the S&P 500 finished down about 80 basis points. The NASDAQ finished down 130 basis points, and the Dow opened up 875 points, but ended down 60%. 10-year was trading around 72 basis points, which is in the range that it has been. Again on Friday and yet again today, we've seen this trend in the 10-year where it opens up and prices rally, which means bond yields fall. And following that time in the New York session between 7 a.m. and noon, where we see these prices rallying and yields falling, they fall an average of about 5 basis points before correcting in the afternoon. This is a really interesting pattern to look out for. In terms of themes to watch, there are three major macroeconomic events that we're really looking to right now. Firstly, Brexit has an October 15th meeting that we're looking to. And it's becoming more and more likely that we'll see a no-deal rupture from the European Union. The pound was beaten down about 1% against the dollar, known as the cable rate between the USD and pound, to 130 and 4, so 1.304, which is the lowest rate in 2 weeks. The no deal makes exports to its biggest market, the European Union, more expensive. But an additional benefit that could come from withdrawal to the Union is the new customs agents jobs that are now going to be created, which could be up to 50,000 new jobs. Given the state of unemployment and how many people are currently looking for jobs, that could definitely be something that could buoy the economy. Considering Merkel in Germany compared to Putin, we see the Nord Stream 2 situation, which is the very controversial gas pipeline. Germany's foreign minister had threatened to reconsider investing in the pipeline if Russia doesn't cooperate with an investigation to the poisoning of Alex Navalny. On August 20th, the prominent German Putin critic was poisoned by a chemical nerve agent, but the Russians deny involvement. Question becomes, will Germany take enough action to withdraw from this investment, seeing that they've already put up so much in upfront capital? Over 100 different countries from 12 European countries are involved as well. The United States claims that the pipeline will make Germany dependent on Russian gas but they want Europe to buy American gas instead of being dependent on Russian gas for both the socio-political and direct personal benefits there. The Nord Stream 2 would double the Russian gas exports into Germany. Considering souring oil demand, we've seen stark decreases in the price of Brent and other futures contracts as well. Brent is trading below 40, which is a large psychological level, in addition to something that's, put simply, very low. When prices are low, we see refineries struggling, and profit margins are so low the refineries are not really in a rush to come back into service after the Hurricane Laura. A substantial portion of the U.S. reserves are in the Gulf region, which was hit by Hurricane Laura. Lucky enough, that situation wasn't as dire as it could have been, but still, the need to reopen it could constitute a need for higher oil prices. In addition, we see competition over gas and regional rivalries, fueling the standoff between Turkey and its neighbors, including Greece, which has created an entire situation out in the Mediterranean Sea. It's a little bit more than I want to get into in this discussion, but I do strongly encourage that you look into that for more information and more detail, given that region. On the left of your screen, as usual, you can see the price movements in the equity markets in the United States and across the world. We see the S&P 500 down and the Dow down, comparable amounts, both down about 2.5%. So the big stories of the day, we've got 6 to talk about. Firstly, Buffett has decreased its stake in Wells Fargo by about 40% and now only owns 3.3% of the firm. In this measure, he's sold off 100 million shares, and the Wells Fargo shares are down a whopping 54% this year. Buffett's also picked up Bank of America and rotated there in his bank states. In addition, Wells Fargo is expected to cut annual expenses by $10 billion and posted its first quarterly loss since 2008. One of the big drivers for this is increased loan loss provisions, given the dire situation of the global health crisis. AstraZeneca just had a vaccine hiccup this evening, which is particularly pertinent because they had one of the leading candidates for the vaccine. The COVID study has been put on hold after adverse patient reactions in the United Kingdom during phase 3 trials. The AZD1222 vaccine carries something called an adenovirus carrying a gene for one of the SARS-CoV-2 proteins, which induces the immune system to generate the protective responses against SARS-2, which basically uses the same protein or attacks the same protein as the Ebola experimental vaccines also did. So it was one of the front runners to be a leading candidate for something that would work very well. However, we have to take a routine safety pause due to severe adverse effects. They're investigating, but not surprisingly, the AstraZeneca stock is down dramatically, about 6% after hours. We'll look to see if more information comes out tomorrow. Slack reported its earnings after the bell today on Tuesday. They grew revenue by a whopping 50% for the third quarter in a row. However, this was not enough to impress investors. They were down 15% because of calculated billings, short of estimates. And something else to note is the number of people that use Slack, but also use Office 365 products. Microsoft has a comparable product dubbed Microsoft Teams, which is a huge competitor to Slack, and they are not seeing a win rate change against Microsoft. The GAAP earnings per share were $0 and $0 a share. which actually was better than the expected, -3 cents a share. This was a net loss of $73 million from a net loss of 360 the same quarter last year. So we see a dramatic improvement there, but again, we're down 15% on Slack after hours. Kakao Games is doing an IPO in Korea. Kakao is a big messaging app that has a very interactive user interface. It's incredibly popular in Korea. It's comparable to a WeChat or Weixin for those of you that are Chinese and have experience with that platform. In addition, this debut will be on the Kozak, which is similar to the NASDAQ, but in Korea, the opening price is expected to be around 24,000 won a share, with a record-breaking subscription this month. This operating profit of 35 billion won and sales of 391 billion won last year have fueled investor demand. This absolutely substantial oversubscription should play out for a pretty bullish situation in the IPO. In addition to Mansec, which is the private equity fund that represents Singapore's sovereign wealth fund, has increased their exposure to China and Chinese equities in particular. They are incredibly bullish on China by expanding their positions and focusing on China, not Hong Kong, and note that it's an incredibly large economy with positive GDP growth. Most shares were in Hong Kong when they had positions in Alibaba, but they've rotated into the United States so they can trade in both time zones and have increased their positions there. In addition, they are particularly bullish in the areas of life sciences, general consumption, and fintech in China. They're avoiding bad debt and staying more towards these more stable industries. Something else to note that's particularly pertinent is Argentinian paper came out today. This was the first day of trading for the new notes, which had been executed through a debt-for-debt exchange. These new bonds started trading today after 65 billion US dollar restructuring, which is the 9th restructuring the country has been to. 9 times. That's pretty whopping to me. In addition, we see a 99% acceptance of the plan. Last 1% is because of European bondholders that when their money is invested in emerging market funds like Argentina, and they need to participate on these unsecured creditor committees. There's a whole different process, but that shouldn't be an issue. We should see the plan come completely through. The net present value was about 55 cents on the dollar, which rebounded from its low of about 20 cents, but obviously face is 100, so that's quite a steep discount. This included a default on the notable Century bond that matured in the year 2117, and the new dollar bond titles yielded a whopping 11%, which makes sense given both the current low interest rate environment, but the heightened risk of the economy coming out of its, yet again, 9th restructuring. In addition, we'll move on to news from the rates markets. We see, as mentioned earlier, a continued morning steepener unwind, which means we've seen drops in open interest across the board, but particularly in the 5-year and 30-year notes. This shows that the 5-year, 30-year spread trade, which had been incredibly popular, particularly on the steepener side, is now unwinding, as we've seen here on the chart on the right. This shows the yield curve in early March, mid-March, and the end of March compared to the yield curve of today. We see that the yield curve from today, which is noted in the orange, is very similar to the white line here, with comparable steepness across the curve. We find ourselves in a pretty comparable position there. Again, one of the interesting things that Powell has mentioned recently is that they are willing and eager to overshoot inflation in the short term because they want to shoot for a symmetric 2% target over the long run, which encompasses the entire business cycle, not just at a specific point in time, which again allows for an overshoot of inflation, which is one of the reasons that you'll see a slightly higher 30-year. Just for a quick rundown, we see the 30-year trading at 143, the 10-year at 69, and the 5-year over here at 28. And that pretty much does it for today. Love to open up the floor for questions and get your thoughts on what has been going on. So feel free to just hop on or send a message in the chat. Is there anything you guys have on your minds? Anything I can answer?
Today I got nothing.
You got nothing? Oh no.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Does anyone else have anything on their minds? Okay. Cool. All right. Well, if there's nothing I can answer, uh, let me know if there's anything I can do. I will definitely see you guys Thursday. If there's ever anything that you'd want to include, anything in particular that's exciting or relevant, or anything that you'd like to hear more of, any direction that you want to hear more about, if it's rates, esoteric products, or equities, just please do let me know. I obviously enjoy this, but love talking about markets, would love to tailor the conversation any way that would be most useful or most exciting for you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good one.
See you Thursday.